Hey friends, Catherine Korostoff here from Research Rockstar, and today I'd like to talk about research writing. It can be a very challenging area for even those of us who've been in the market research and insight space for quite some time. And I've decided to title this conversation, Walking Before Running, How to Amp Up Your Research Writing. And hopefully that sort of imagery, that metaphor will make sense in just a minute. So let's get started by asking a really important question, which is, when you think about writing a market research report, what are your biggest pain points? Now, this is a question I often ask of my students at Research Rockstar. One of the courses I personally teach here is the course on writing quantitative research reports. And while that's primarily survey research, it can be about other quantitative data sources as well. But the important thing is I often hear the same sources of pain. It's very consistent. People want to get to the golden nuggets that are going to ignite insights, right? Everybody wants to write a research report that's going to inspire their readers, that's going to help their clients or their stakeholders make important decisions and take action. And that's fantastic. That's a wonderful thing to aspire to for those of us who work in this profession. We don't want to write research reports that are just going to sit on the these days, imaginary shelf, sit on a server collecting hypothetical dust, as it were, but that are actually going to get used. And the challenge is that we have to do this, we have to get to those golden nuggets. And the real source of pain there is not only getting to the golden nuggets and feeling confident that you've reached those right ahas, those right key findings, but that you've done so quickly. Because these days, we are all under the gun as market research and insights professionals to get to our conclusions, our key findings, our recommendations very quickly. It's not uncommon for me to be talking to Research Rockstar students and have them talk about the fact that they often will only have 5 or 7 business days after they have gotten out of the field, after they finished data collection, for example, from a survey research project. They've just finished data collection, and now they've got maybe 5 or 7 business days to actually write a report. But these days, the expectations are really high that that report is going to be executive ready. And whether you're creating reports for internal stakeholders or external clients, the pressure seems to be there really universally. So how do you get to those golden nuggets? Whether for you, your golden nuggets are the key findings or powerful conclusions or powerful recommendations, and doing so quickly. And here's the challenge. That's the stuff that is really the running, right? Getting to those real ahas, that's running, that's operating at a very high level. And the reality is you can't run unless you know how to walk. And in market research writing, I often see people trying to go too quickly through the preliminary phase in order to get to the stuff, right? The sexy stuff, the conclusions, the recommendations that are kind of where you tend to kind of ignite the actual insights, right? But you gotta walk before you can run. So let's talk about what that means. When we're writing market research reports, part of our job is to summarize the results. It's not the sexiest part of our job, but doing so well can actually be very challenging. We have to summarize the results very thoroughly, very objectively, so that we can get to the point of synthesis. And that's where we're going to get to those golden nuggets, the ahas, the key findings, the powerful conclusions and recommendations. If we don't take the time to thoroughly read our data, to thoroughly summarize it objectively as a first phase, we're going to struggle with doing the synthesis that's necessary to get us to the next phase. We have to walk before we can run. So let's take an example. I would say that our goal as researchers when we're summarizing data is to summarize it extremely objectively. We want to look at all of our research results, and when we are reading through our research results, we want to be very objective. And at this point, we don't want to bring in a lot of outside data, a lot of outside sources. We can do that later. But when we're summarizing our current study, the first thing we have to do is summarize that study. So we want to take a really pure point of view. I've just gotten out of the field. I've got the data output from my survey research. I've got maybe banner tables or reports with my frequency distributions and other summary statistics. I need to read that data. I need to be familiar with all of the data. That is my job. If I'm writing the report, I need to be familiar with the data. So I have to do that very important job of reading through my data and then summarizing it. And my summary statements need to be highly factual. Now, I've given you an example here that's a little bit market researchy. For different audiences, I would write this with a different tone. But for the sake of an example, let's say that I've just done a study on cookies. And we did a survey to look at interest and potential new cookie flavors. So this was done by a survey. It's not a taste test yet. It's just the survey to test the ideas about different high-level cookie concepts. And based on my survey results, I'm going to make an objective summary of some of these data points. So my hypothetical example here, and this is for to further my case study, the hypothetical client is specifically interested in identifying new cookie flavor ideas that are going to appeal to women. So here's my summary statement. Among females, both Mega Mocha and Apple Almond were both rated highly on a likeliness to try scale. 75% top 2 box for Mega Mocha and 71% for Apple Almond. Very Berry lags at 52% top 2 box. Not the sexiest thing in the world, right? But an effective summarization. I'm basically saying that there were 3 flavors that were at the top. 2 of them were basically neck and neck, really for, effectively tied for top 2 box. And then the next one down lagged a lot. It dropped down from 71% to 52%. That's a pretty big jump. So I've made a really important summarization. I didn't bring in outside data. I'm not making an opinion. I'm just summarizing. But by summarizing my data, by reading my data and making those types of summary statements, I am digesting my data. I'm activating my own brain. I have to read my data. I have to write those summary statements, not only because I want to be a good reporter and an objective researcher, but because this is going to help me to digest those results. Now, once I start to weave in multiple data points, I'm just starting to make the transition from summarization to synthesis. But the summarization is the walking. I got to walk before I can run. And if I do a good job summarizing, I'm going to be, well, frankly, doing my job well as a researcher and wanting to be an objective reporter of research results. But it's also preparing me to get to that next stage of synthesis where I'm really going to get into the key findings and the conclusions and the recommendations and so forth. So a lot of times, one of the things that people seem to struggle with is maybe they can do a good job of summarizing 1 or 2 data points, but then they seem to get a little bit stuck in how to weave them together. So here's a very simple example of weaving. Of the tested flavors, Mega Mocha may be the best opportunity to win female customers. While Apple Almond also scored highly on likeliness to try, females were willing to pay notably more for Mega Mocha. So here, I've simply taken 2 data points from my survey, the data on likeliness to try and data from apparently a question on willingness to pay a certain amount of money. I've got 2 different data points and I brought them together to help tell the story. Whenever I can bring 2 data points together and weave them together like that, I'm adding value. I'm finding important results and I'm showing how they go together to tell that story. And that really is also kind of helping me to take that step, if you will, from walking to starting to run. I'm starting to pick up speed. I'm not running on full speed yet, but I'm getting there. And so it's a really important thing to be comfortable with the fact that when we're writing research reports, part of our reports do need to be summarization. And that's usually what we consider the body of the report or the core sections of the report. We'll save the synthesis for the management summary. That's where we're going to really get into really getting into igniting those insights, right? But if I do a good job writing the body part of my report, the core sections of my report, and being a really good reporter, I am going to digest my data. I'm going to be doing a really good job by summarizing the data objectively, and I'm going to start preparing myself for that synthesis. So then, what are we ultimately trying to get to? Well, we know that our pain point is we want to make sure that we can efficiently get to synthesis, right? Because we want to efficiently get to those ahas that are going to inspire insights. I can't just jump to synthesis. I have to do the summarization first. I have to actually read my data and think about it before I can start synthesizing it. And a lot of times I see people speeding through. They're just like, they don't want to do the summarization. I've even had students, frankly, who don't always, have a lot of experience being fully responsible for their data. Yes, you actually have to read your data. If you're being provided with data output, whether it's summary statistics, banner tables, whatever the format is, if you're the person writing the report, you really do need to get familiar with all of your data. I know that can feel a little bit tedious, but this is actually ultimately going to save you time and help you to add more value. So don't be one of those researchers who tries to, jump over the process. You have to summarize your data in order to be able to synthesize it. So what does that look like? Well, first of all, after you read your data, you do want to go through the exercise of summarizing it, writing those summary text points that are probably going into a PowerPoint report for many of us in this field, where we're going to be doing that sort of summarization of what were the key results. In our case, 2 flavors were effectively tied, a third lagged, but if we weave in this other data point about willingness to pay more, we're starting to get a story. That's great. I'm summarizing my data. Now, then how do I get from there to really synthesis? So I like to say we start with summarization and then we go to the synthesis. And if you are struggling with synthesizing your data, the best thing you can do is to use frameworks or taxonomies to help you do that. And there are many known frameworks or taxonomies. Some of you may work on teams where you have your own frameworks or taxonomies, and some of them can be very high level. Like even a SWOT analysis, the good old business school strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. That's a framework. You're categorizing your data now into 4 different buckets, and that's going to help to reveal important themes in your results. Some organizations like the jobs to be done model. It's been very popular the last couple of years. That gives you another sort of way of, another framework for analyzing your research results. There are many frameworks and taxonomies that we can use. And I teach some of them in our course on writing quantitative research reports. And I'm sure some of you have in your own teams different taxonomies or frameworks that your teams like to use. By using known taxonomies or frameworks, it will help you to categorize your data so that you can synthesize it. Not everybody is going to have just a natural talent to look at a bunch of data and come up with brilliant themes and patterns from it, right? There are people who have that as a natural talent. They are few and far between. I would also question whether or not their ability to pull that kind of analysis out of thin air is really objective and thorough, right? If you use a framework or a taxonomy approach, you are going to be more objective in how you're synthesizing your data, and you're probably going to be more thorough in how you're synthesizing your data. And basically, when you use a taxonomy or framework, it's giving you either a visual approach for categorizing your data so that you can synthesize it. Sometimes it's thematic. There are different sort of bases for these things, but it's the best way to get you from an excellent summary to really getting you to the next stage. And that's really where ultimately, again, we want to get to. We want to catalyze our research results so that we can inspire our clients. We want to inspire those insights. I cannot give somebody an insight on a silver platter. I can ignite insights, I can inspire insights, but I can't say, here's your insight, you now have an insight, right? They have to get there themselves. That's kind of what makes it an insight, right? They have to have that moment of insight. And I can inspire it or ignite it by making sure that I've synthesized my data very thoroughly, very objectively, so that I can help them get there. And sometimes it's simple stuff like, then taking that synthesis and writing about it in the language of business or whatever language is going to be friendly for your specific audience. If you're not sure, I always say to our students, if you're not sure how to write up your synthesis, your real ahas, start with opportunities and challenges. Start thinking about whatever kind of synthesis or framework you used, and now take that synthesis and start crafting it into, what does this mean for opportunities? How can this help the organization save money? How can it help the organization make money? How can it help the organization improve customer loyalty? Really look for those, what are the opportunities, or what are the challenges that we've learned from this research? Very often, even at the highest level, framing things in terms of opportunities and challenges will help you to get very efficiently from talking like a market researcher that to talking to the marketing executive, the brand manager, the product manager, the C-suite executive who's ultimately going to be using your research results. So again, to me, this is really, if we want to do this work and we want to do it efficiently, step one is walking. You have to read and summarize your data. Step two is categorizing your data to really get you ready for synthesis. You got to categorize your data so that you can synthesize it. And if you don't have an existing way of doing it, use known frameworks or taxonomies. And then step three, to really get to the point where you can inspire insights, make sure that you are taking that next step to use your audience's language, whether it's your external client, your internal stakeholder, whoever you're delivering this research to, start using their language so that you can inspire their insights. They're going to be more inspired if you're talking their language than if you're talking market research. So again, I know that our job is hard. These days, you may only have 5 to 7 business days to take your data and turn it into an inspiring report, but you will actually save yourself time if instead of just going straight to the running, if you walk first. Take a deep breath, read your data, summarize your data, do an awesome job summarizing your data, and I promise you that the next phase of synthesizing your data will definitely come a lot easier. I hope that conversation was helpful. If anybody has any questions, certainly let me know. And if you enjoyed this, please do subscribe to us and give us great reviews on YouTube or on your podcast platforms. Thanks, folks. I appreciate your time.